Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Don't Praise the Machine. This is episode number 177. I'm one of your hosts. I go by the name Alexander Holland. I'm sat in a beautiful and sunny Berlin, Germany. And as always, sat across from me digitally in deep down dirty Melbourne town, it's the number one tenured professor of podcasting. He's got to be the one called
John Junior Boost Maloney.
John Junior Boost Maloney. I want to say John Junior Boost Maloney. John Junior Boost Maloney. Got myself a brand new toy. Got myself a brand new toy. The Yamaha pitch shifter that comes with my sound card that I only discovered this week. And I thought this was such a fun toy to play with.
Sound like Mully Grubs. Or can you give us a bit of do you believe in life after love?
Yeah, I can actually. Hang on, I think I have to turn on. Wait.
No, you sound like a whistleblower who's talking to a current affair.
I need to get the right key to be able. I don't know what key believe. Do you believe in life after love? I can feel something inside me say, I really don't think you're strong enough now.
Oh yeah, love it.
Thank you, Cher, and thank you, Sonny, for support. Thank you, Sonny, for supporting Cher for so many years and turning her into the beautiful grown-up woman that we love so dear. She wouldn't have grown up to be such a beautiful woman without the support of Sonny Bono. Speaking of music, Jimmy John.
I don't know if you've done your research. Yeah.
Jimmy John. I went for a run the other day and I was and I took my phone with me on this particular run and I was going through my Spotify playlist because I wanted to play something. Mm-hmm. And I did that thing where you look up what it can recommend you based on your algorithm, basically. And what it said to me really caught my eye. It said, we've got a very special playlist that we've made for you, Alexander Michael Holland. It's the Spotify Guilty Pleasures playlist based on your listening history. Now,
wow.
It's one thing for Spotify to have curated their own Guilty Pleasures playlist because that means that they've got some intern who's going, put in, Neil Diamond, put in, Brown Eyed Girl, put in Nutbush City Limit, put in Spice Girl. Somebody's
Macarena.
making, Macarena. But the algorithm has looked at my bazillion gajillion songs that I've listened to, and it said, here's a playlist we've made of songs you like, Alex, and it's your Guilty Pleasures playlist. Now, the first question is, how has Spotify's algorithm determined that these songs are guilty pleasure songs? For anybody who is maybe not familiar with the term guilty pleasure when it comes to music, it's like a song that you might be you're trying to be cool and you might be embarrassed. It's a bit cheesy. What's your guilty pleasure, John? Maybe an artist, or you're often in the back of cabs singing along.
It's true.
What would be a guilty pleasure, or maybe even how would you describe a guilty pleasure song?
Sure. So a guilty pleasure song is something that you might feel is kind of off-brand for you because you're trying to create a persona, or perhaps trying to think of yourself as someone who's into good music, who's into interesting music, and yet you can't help but be drawn to, a particular song by Cardi B or Werewolves of London by Warren Zevon, if you may. Or,
I don't know what that is.
Is
that a recent song?
No, it's old. It goes, "Oh, Werewolves of London." You know that one?
Oh.
Yeah. Here's a
Gold by Spandau Ballet.
Who ran amok in Kent? It's a kind of cheeseball 70s classic, or your favorite and mine. Da 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 boom boom da da.
Yeah, Dave Dobbin. Yeah,
that's
probably heaven.
That's a bit of a guilty pleasure of mine because it's kind of a boneheaded song, but I do love listening to it every now and then. So, and then what invariably happens to me is I I indulge too much in my guilty pleasures, and then they just end up on my Wrapped playlist at the end of the year.
Right.
So my brand is ruined. But I guess I guess Spotify must be doing something other than that, because if you're playing it all the time, it would just say, well, that's just your music taste. Whereas a guilty pleasure, maybe it's going, is this a song that you're always putting on at 1 a.m. when you come home from being out? Or I don't know.
I was assuming that it's making a different kind of taste decision, because I don't think it would say, oh, I'm just going to put on something from Miles Davis, some kind of blue into your guilty. I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe it would do that. But my assumption is that it's making a taste decision. Like, it wouldn't say, it's not going to say, oh, yeah, Claire de Lune by Debussy, your guilty pleasure.
Your guilty pleasure is the Ring Cycle. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, your guilty pleasure is just some very challenging jazz for the next 12 hours.
Yeah,
so I would love to know how it's decided that these songs are guilty pleasures. I can tell you what's come up, by the way. So I've just opened it now. So the first track that's come up on my guilty pleasures mix, Return of the Mac Morrison.
Oh, that is a guilty pleasure. I mean, it's a great song though. I wonder if I've got one of these. I'm just having a look now.
Have a look, John, and see what your guilty pleasure is.
The other one.
Have a look, John, and see what your guilty pleasure mix is.
That's really adding to the show. I think probably I've got some Chris Isaac in there, is what I'm guessing.
Oh,
Guilty pleasures playlist Spotify made for you.
Let's go, John. We'll go 1 for 1.
Okay,
so
1 for 1.
I've gone Return of the Mac Morrison. What's your guilty pleasure?
Number 1 is You Can Call Me Al by Paul Simon.
Oh, that's a great song. But also, yeah, that would fall in. Do you after each one, John, I will say, do you accept guilty pleasure?
Will you accept this guilt?
And you say, I will. The second one for me is Just the Way You Are by Milky, which, if you don't know, is I think it's Italian. This song was a pop song from the noughties, and it samples Streets of Your Town by the Go-Betweens. It's got that jinga jinga jinga. I think you would know this song, John. It's that one that goes
oh yeah, I do. Yeah.
And then she goes, the way you love to kiss me. I want you just the way you are. So that's what.
Yeah.
That's my samples Queensland's finest, the Go-Betweens from song Streets of Your Town. The question is, Alex, do you accept this guilt? Yes, I accept this guilt.
Okay, my number 2 is Take Your Mama by the Scissor Sisters. Take your mama.
Man, I haven't thought of that for a while. Scissor Sisters.
I accept this guilt.
Excellent. The next one by me is one of your favourites. Wow, both our playlists suddenly getting a little on the queer side. Mine is Rush by Troye Sivan.
Oh, wow. Yeah, yours
doesn't he live near you?
Very unsurprisingly, yours are more contemporary than mine.
I feel the rush, addicted to your touch.
That's right.
Doesn't he live near you, Troy? Doesn't he have a multi-million-dollar house near you?
Let's get him on the show. He lives in a little, I think it's called MacArthur Place. It's a place I'll just give out his address on the podcast.
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody knows. Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty widely known. And I've left a few notes for him, but I haven't received any responses. Yeah, he lives in this kind of, it's one of those places that outwardly looks pretty big, but not kind of nondescript. But he's been in a bunch of interior design mags because he's got it all lovely inside.
It is beautiful. I've seen some of those YouTube videos.
Troye Sivan,
we want to be a best friend with you.
So that's my next one. What did you have, John, as your next guilty pleasure?
Number 3, coming in hot is Bonnie Tyler with Total Eclipse of the Heart.
Oh, wow. Do you listen to these quite a lot?
No,
Is that why?
I don't. I don't know why. I actually don't. I mean, to be honest with you, I like Paul Simon, but I would, when that kind of song comes on, I usually skip it.
Okay.
Because it's just a bit overplayed. I don't really listen to the Scissor Sisters, although I don't hate it, but I just don't really get around to listening to it. And Total Eclipse of the Heart, I actually find quite grating. So I don't know where this is coming from, but I can understand. I think they're probably adjacent to my taste, and that's why it's going. Yeah, that's why it must be doing it. Must be this.
Because what it will have done, John, which maybe the way a lot of this data works is it goes people who like Paul Simon and what was the second one? And Scissor Sisters also love those people. A lot of them also listen to Bonnie Tyler. And they've gone, John might be one of those people as well. John, do you accept this guilt?
I accept it. Yeah. Pile it on. Pile it on my guilt.
Next one, John, I've got is a lady who has had an absolute renaissance thanks to social media sites like TikTok, and that's Nelly Furtado. She's coming in hot with I'm Like a Bird.
I'm Like a Bird. Yeah, great song. Is kind of her guilty pleasure song, isn't it? And also it represents a time when she was at a crossroads. She wasn't sure if she was going to present herself as a kind of slick, Gaga-esque pop singer or as a more down-home Alanis Morissette kind of soulful figure, and that song is a little bit of both.
Actually. And then it is much more kind of like dreadlocky, crusty, wondering about the universe, van life kind of vibe.
It's van life, exactly.
Because then after that she's done, and the song that I'm thinking of that absolutely blew up on social media is that, oh, you don't need nothing at all me, which I think blew up after a young man in a Power Rangers t-shirt danced to it in front of a mirror, and it was quite goofy, and then everybody started copying him, and it was just it was a joyous moment. My mum's calling me here. Should we put her on the show?
Yeah, let's do it.
She's about to come to Berlin. Let's put her on the show.
Great. Can't believe we've gotten this far without doing that.
Yeah. Hello, Alexander Holland speaking.
It's me, darling. Mum.
Hey, Mum. Ducks on the Pond.
This is my...
Ducks on the Pond.
Oh, who's that? Who is it?
The podcast.
What's Ducks on the Pond, mate?
Ducks on the Pond means other people are listening. It's a Meganism.
Wow.
I know, but what do you mean the podcast?
I mean, I'm recording the podcast with John as we speak, and so everything.
Well, I'll go because I thought you rang me.
Hi, Marie.
I just wanted to. That's John saying hello.
Hello, John.
Hi,
and
guys.
Say hi to Ned.
That's Ned. Hi, Ned.
Hi, Ned.
Hi.
We're leaving in 1 hour.
And tell the podcast where you're going. They don't know.
I'm heading over to Berlin to see Alex.
Yes. Amazing.
Coming to Berlin.
So are you?
So we'll be. We'll take it. We're leaving for the airport in an hour.
Okay.
And we'll contact you as we're heading off.
Okay, amazing. So everything's going according to plan?
Everything's going according to plan. And now you've got my WhatsApp number.
Thanks. Okay, cool. All right.
All right, sweetheart.
I've got to record the rest of the... Love you too. Send me some text. Bye. Everybody that was...
Bye, John.
Say bye. And so say goodbye to the Don't Praises, Mum.
Oh, don't you dare put this on there. Goodbye, don't praise us, but don't put that on, thank you.
Okay, definitely. I definitely won't buy. That's a great Meganism, Ducks on the Pond.
Yeah.
Which means, so if you're ever
you're being listened to.
Yeah, so because Mum and her brothers and sisters, particularly her sisters, because they call each other every 3 seconds.
Yeah.
They have this thing they say, which means that
gossip.
I'm not. Yeah, they're always on speaker, and so they always call each other in the car because it's Adelaide, so everybody's just everybody's just in their car for like 97% of the day. It's just like everybody just exists in their car, and so the phone is often ringing, and they'll answer. And then if I'm in the car, Mum will say, "Hey, Michelle, how you going? Ducks on the pond." And Michelle will go, "Oh, who's there?" "Oh, it's Alex." "Hi, Michelle, how you going?"
Ducks on the pond. Wow, it's like they've been trained in espionage. The concern that you raised about, who does the onus fall on? Is it on the person listening to say, either I'm going to willfully stop listening now, or I'm going to make myself known? I mean, if you walk into a room and you feel as though people are having a private conversation because they don't think you're there, I think it's courteous, and I tend to, partly for fear of hearing something that I shouldn't and wish I hadn't, I'll like cough, clear my throat to make sure everyone knows I'm there. But when you're climbing a mountain, that's a little bit difficult. I mean, I'm not sure that mountain climbing needs its own etiquette playbook because it's a sufficiently rare scenario. But it reminded me of
Not for mountain climbers.
Reminded me of a time when I was at a sleepover. I would have been about 12.
Yeah.
And I got up to use the bathroom, have a drink of Passiona out of the fridge, and it was at a sleepover. So it was a friend's house, was a bit unfamiliar to me. And then all of a sudden, my friend's mum appeared at the end of the corridor. She was naked. And
Classic.
And I thought, what do I do here? Because if I feel like the polite thing to do might be to, tell her that I'm here, but also if we could just get through this without her ever realizing that would be best for everyone concerned. And so I just stayed quiet and sort of, I don't think I could really extricate myself without being seen. So I just stood very still until she walked across the corridor out of sight, and then I went to bed, having seen my friend's mum in the nude. And I won't say who it is because I never told him or her that.
No, I know who it is because you've told me this, because you tell this story quite regularly, and I love it.
I didn't realize I'd told it, but yeah, it was. I mean, it made an impression, and so that was a kind of, I'm too deep in now to, like, equally, if you're eavesdropping and then you start hearing some fucked up things, you think this would almost be better now if I don't let them know that I've heard them, and I just try and put this out of my mind.
Yeah. I try and what do I like? Yeah, it's a similar situation again. It's a similar situation that is somewhat new since mobile phones, and that is one of two things happens. People say, you on the mobile phone to somebody, and they say, "I'll see you later," and you say, "Yep, I'll see you later." It could also be through an app, like you're chatting to them on WhatsApp voice, and you say goodbye, and they don't hang up. They think they have hung up, and they haven't, and so suddenly you just have like personal microphone of them following around, and also it's a hot mic, and they've just spoken to you.
Yeah.
So it's likely that they might just say to us, "Oh, what were you just doing then?" "Oh, I was on the phone to John," and then
he's such a cunt. Yeah.
Exactly. So I have a thing where I'm the same as you. I don't want to hear that. So as soon as I hear that they haven't hung up, I'm just like, shit, hang up, because I just think they're going to go, "Oh my God, fucking Alex just called me. How does he keep getting my new number?"
Exactly. I get off the phone and say, what's the best way to break up with a friend? And you go, "Oh, fuck, wish I'd hung up."
Or the other one is, which is, it's less likely they're going to be talking about you, but that is when somebody accidentally butt dials you. So that is when somebody accidentally calls you. Maybe they sit on their phone. My name starts with the letter A. I'm often high up in people's phone books. So suddenly you go, "Hello," and you just hear,
"Yeah,
hello, this is Alex. Are you trying to call me?"
Yeah, I wonder if there must be stories out there where people have done that and then inadvertently discovered things that the other person would have preferred they didn't. They think they get a bum dial from their husband who's off somewhere where he said he wasn't going to be.
Yeah.
Classic. I mean, the great example of that.
They get it. The wife gets a bum dial from a much more pert and beautiful bum than her own.
Exactly. She can tell by the sound of the phone chafing that it's a very taut bum. She's like, that's definitely not my husband's bum. What's going on?
He's chosen a better bum for tonight.
Exactly. For some reason, he's put his phone in the back of her pants. But yeah, and the other thing that, I mean, I've been involved in a couple of cases where this has been a thing where the police have bugged people's houses, partly because they know that people talk to each other, of course, and that they might, you know, if they're keeping an eye on somebody because they suspect that they were involved in a robbery or a kidnapping or a murder or something, but also because people talk to themselves as they're going about their day. And in which seems bizarre that, you know, you bug somebody's home in the likelihood that they might be doing the dishes and they just start going, I murdered someone the other day. But it does
like another great Simpsons stealing a car for Mo. Something. Insurance fraud today.
That's right.
And then he ends up watching Hail to the Chimp when he's meant to be. He's meant to be doing the car insurance fraud, and he just goes
to the chimp.
Goes to the drive-in and watches Hail to the Chimp. Sorry, don't
Wonderful.
praise. Too many esoteric Simpsons jokes in a row here on the show.
Stuff.
John, let's do one more each of the guilty pleasures.
Okay,
I'll just pick one. A song that I want to talk about a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Let's have a look. We've got. Actually, I'll just read you a bunch. So I've got like Glamorous by Fergie and Ludacris.
Mm-hmm.
I've got one of your favorite. Don't you love that Cheerleader song by Felix?
Yeah, it's good stuff.
I think that I found myself a cheerleader. I've got Symphony by Clean Bandit, which I absolutely fucking love. I listen to that a ton to get
How's
me
that
in a
go?
good mood. I just want to be part of your symphony.
Oh.
When you hold me tight and don't let go.
It's good. You're a real
my last one.
You just love good production.
I do. It's true. I've got all mine are just slick production. I've got Fantasy by Mariah Carey. I've got Waterfalls by TLC. Guys, I've also got Closing Time by Semisonic, which did come on.
Wow.
Do you remember that song? That's such a great song.
Closing Time. Is that the one? Yeah.
Time for you to go home to the places you will be from. I know I want to take home. John, give us a couple more of your
I sometimes sing that when I'm getting dressed. I just say, clothing time. Time to put my pants
the
on.
shirts on. And I don't know where I put my belt. Clothing time.
I literally said that, I reckon. Yeah, I've got some good stuff in here. So I think I left off at Total Eclipse of the Heart. The next one is Copacabana by Barry Manilow, which I'd quite like to listen to.
that is pure guilt. You must accept that guilt.
I must accept that guilt. Yeah, I'll have to say a few Hail Marys about that one. And then Gimme by ABBA.
Oh, by ABBA,
I would never listen to that.
That's pure guilt.
Then there's a few that I would listen to. Banana Boat by Harry Belafonte, I like.
Oh, it's that one. Yeah, okay.
Dance Hall Days by Wang Chung. You're my
that's
favorite.
A great song. He was up in fires without all days. I want to give a shout out to friend of the show, Tommy Vassetti from Vice City.
That's right. Mr. Jones by Counting Crows.
That's a great song. Down the New Amsterdam, smells a little hair bell.
And of course,
head.
one which I did get really into when I think I was in Canada, and I was just walking around Toronto playing this on my headphones, and it's Steal My Sunshine by Len.
Yeah. Do you know what, John? It's also on mine.
Oh, wow.
So maybe it is tagged. Maybe Len, Steal My Sunshine, does have a special tag on it. And I wonder if, and I've got to assume that these tags are not manually entered by a staff member, that the AI it's using some kind of data to decide what's cheesy and what isn't, what's a guilty pleasure and not. And that's such, oh my God. It's one of the greatest songs. I don't care what anybody says. Still My Sunshine by Len. It's one of the greatest songs ever made. I found out as well, I follow
It's the reason
Bauer.
I like butter tarts.
Such a great intro as well. Have you seen Mark lately? Well, I've seen him, but he looks kind of down. It's such a unique song as well. Like everything about it, it's just like, this doesn't sound like anything else.
It's true.
I was watching, I'll after the show, I'll put the Instagram video on. There's a really cool musician producer that I love called Bauer, who was most famous for that the Harlem Shake. He made that song that everybody was Harlem Shaking to some years ago. He's great. He's got a really, really likable personality on social media, and he does these amazing sample breakdowns. And Still My Sunshine by Len, it's like 3 or maybe even less. It's like a couple of samples looped from 70s disco records.
Wow.
Which gives it that really interesting, there's that kind of loud wooden clavy doon, doon with the big doo-doo, doo-doo, that big wooden clav sound with a ton of reverb on it.
Yeah.
It's from quite a well-known 70s disco song, and then they basically just wrote the top line vocal over it.
Yeah.
And Bob's your uncle. You got Still My Sunshine by Len.
Wow.
And we want to thank you, Len, for that guilty pleasure.
You, Len. And the guy's cousin, who apparently he was talking about having a crush on in a song, which was a little bit distasteful to some listeners.
What line is that?
So the second bit of talking that goes over the song where he's talking about, where he says, what's that? I can't remember the name of the woman, but he says, Helen, I love you, or whatever her name is.
That's right.
Apparently that's his cousin or something. I don't know.
Wow.
One of my Canadian friends
was
telling me that and saying,
it was a different time. It was a different time in music.
When you could love a cousin, you can't love a cousin anymore.
That's so unsettling.
John, I want to thank you for letting me do the guilty pleasure bit. You wrote to me in the week and you said, Alex, what do you know about space?
Yeah. And you said, fucking hell, how many times are you going to bring this up? I'm sick of your space facts. Yeah, I did, because as you may know, as many of our listeners will have heard, Butch Wilmore and Sunita Williams, and again, those are names that I would come up with if I was trying to name astronauts for a script. I don't know whether that's part of the
Armageddon
process.
Script, isn't it?
Exactly. Butch and Sunita. That Butch Wilmore. I mean, it's like played by, Bruce Willis, Butch Wilmore.
Yeah.
And so what happened was they went up to the ISS, the International Space Station, and I'll come back to some history about the ISS in a moment, because it's quite an amazing.
So these are astronauts that went up to the space station these are American astronauts, if I'm correct, John. Mm-hmm. An astronaut has to have come from. Does an astronaut have to have come from NASA? Because the Russians are cosmonauts.
Oh, is that
maybe
right?
not, mate. Well, yeah,
maybe you're right. I actually didn't know what the difference
between
between
Cosmo.
astronaut. No, I don't know. One of them is in the cosmos. So these,
One of them is in the astro.
These were Americans, I believe. So they would have been at NASA.
Okay.
At NASA, and they were on this thing called the Starliner, which was created by Boeing. And fuck me, one of the great bad runs in American corporate history. Boeing is in the midst of at the moment. So Butch and Sunita, they go up on the Starliner. They've both been in space before. I think they've both been the ISS, the International Space Station, before.
Yeah.
And so that, this isn't new territory for them. But they went up and NASA said, look, they might be there for, 7 or 8 days. They've got to do some safety checks. They've got to check on bits and pieces. There's certain parts of the space station even though it's a kind of joint endeavor that NASA has a lot of responsibility for. I mean, NASA's really the dominant party in all of this. And so they sent these two up on this Starliner, and they docked on the ISS on June 6th. And then once they were docked, they started to uncover issues with the Starliner, which was designed and built by Boeing, including things like leaks on the thrusters, and that raised concerns from NASA that if they tried to launch off the space station again, that the thrusters could further leak. That could lead it to spiral out of control and hit the ISS, the International Space Station, which wasn't something that the NASA was prepared to risk, reasonably so. And so they said, no, you've got to stay there until such time as, arrangements can be made for you to be returned. And it's kind of interesting because it was being covered in the media as Butch and Sunita, they're stranded, as though they were kind of just sitting in a box up in space. But NASA was like, look, that's not really what's going on. Like, they're actually quite happy to be up there. And
speaking on their behalf.
That's right. Can we talk to them? No. They're fine. But I mean, it's kind of shocking because you would think if all goes well, I'll be back in a week. And as it's turned out, they're probably not going to be back until early next year. And in the meantime, they're just chilling up in space until about February next year, I think. So
do you know how long it takes that particular Starliner to International Space Station, John?
Yeah,
you know what
question.
I was maybe we've discussed this on the podcast as well. I was really rocked when I heard how quick we get to the moon. I thought it was like months, and I looked it up and I was like, what? Why aren't we just going there all the time?
So this is a report from before they went up from CNBC. It says Starliner will fly in space for about 25 hours before a planned docking, and the astronauts will then spend about a week on the ISS focused on testing Starliner before returning to Earth. Turns out...
So about 24 hours, sort of?
Yeah. So, I mean, you could probably do it quicker. I don't know if they did that, for efficiency. They'd saved their cooled their jets and went up slowly because it's in space, but it's not like
I've never
in the middle of
actually heard the expression "cool your jets" used in its more literal use.
Right. Yeah, I was pleased to be able to do that. And then they said, "Yeah, let's have a look at the Starliner." And then just bits started falling off because I don't know, Boeing has outsourced their manufacturing to people who usually make shoes. And so they're up there. And I mean, I thought initially, well, it was just the two of them up there and they were going to, go mad and kill each other or whatever. But actually, there's already a crew on the International Space Station. There's a crew of, I think, 7 people. And there are a variety of different nationalities, and there's, I think, predominantly Russians and Americans up there at the moment. Although, there's the International Space Station is run as a kind of cooperative endeavor with NASA as the sort of controlling entity, I think. But there's also Roscosmos, which is the Russian. There's the ESA, which is European. It must be European Space Agency, I guess. There's also JAXA, which is Japanese, and CSA, which is Canada. And it's not quite as kind of, I mean, I envisaged that they might be just cramped in a little box, but apparently it's about the size of a football field. The space station is massive. Oh. And so they're up there with these 7 people. The head of the current crew, the commander, who's a guy named Oleg Kononenko, he has recently achieved the record for the most days in space. So as of August 2024, he's accumulated over 1,070 days in space, not consecutively, but over the course of, I think, 5 different missions. But still, that I think has eclipsed the previous record holder by about 300 days now. And that in itself is interesting because you kind of think, well, what is it like to spend? I mean, you might kind of go up there for a week, but what is it like to spend effectively years of your life just living on a space station? And it's pretty weird. Like, yes, everything is fine. And, in all likelihood, Butch and Sunita are just going to come back with one of the kind of regular journeys back to Earth. But still, you're kind of on this, thing and floating in the middle of space and very reliant on things working. Like there are regular deliveries of goods. They have unmanned kind of cargo vessels that drop off goods to the space station.
No way.
And I didn't know about any of this.
Like just robot, like shipping containers going back and forth on a space highway.
I know it's like something out of a Ridley Scott movie. And this thing, the space station, is traveling around Earth extremely fast. It travels at about 17,500 miles per hour. So that's incredibly fast, and that's really the reason why there's kind of near zero gravity, I think, because if you were just to be at that point in space, I think there's about 90% gravity, but because they're kind of being whipped around in this constant orbit, they're circling the Earth something like every 90 minutes, like super fast.
Wow.
And so they're in this constant state of free fall, which means that the effect is that you just feel as though you're floating all the time. And so there's this crew of 7 and then plus 2. And because they weren't kind of part of the contingent that's meant to be up there, Butch and Sunita have sort of had to find ways to kind of ingratiate themselves. They're like ring-ins in a share house or something, and they've got to sort of do things to make themselves useful. And one of those things apparently that they've been doing, whether this is like a hazing or just kind of them displaying goodwill, they've been cleaning the toilet on the space station. And of course that information led me to do a deep dive into, well, what happens to pee and poo in space. And
sure, it's a classic. I've got another one I'm going to ask you once you're done with this story, actually.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, the pee is actually very carefully dealt with because water and oxygen need to be carefully rationed. And so one of the ways they get oxygen, apart from regular, semi-regular deliveries of oxygen tanks, is by taking water and separating out using electricity the oxygen from the hydrogen so that they can use the oxygen, which is pretty amazing. And then
I thought you were going to say one of the ways they get oxygen is by eating frozen piss.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Well, effectively, because I think the piss is put through some sort of processor that
piss machine.
It's put in through a pissometer that turns it back into that puts it back into potable drinking water. So today's coffee piss is tomorrow's cup of coffee on the International Space Station. And the poo is a different matter because they don't find it that useful just to keep canisters full of poo. So they instead they have regular canisters regular canister changes every 7 or 8 days, and depending on volume of solid waste, and then they basically just chuck it to be burned into the atmosphere. So it's just when they re-enter, I think all the shit cans, I think they call them, are just just burned up on re-entry. And then I thought, well, what's going on with toilet cleaning in space? Is there an issue with with hygiene, with skid marks, and then you think, well, what does that mean about, like, what's going on if you shit in the toilet in space on the International Space Station? Are there bacteria then in the toilet bowl, and are they just like cruising around the International Space Station? Because it's like a very closed environment, obviously, that's been just kind of circling around the Earth for now over a quarter of a century. So the space station, bit of background, launched in November 1998, as I said, And it was launched at a time, obviously in the years following the end of the Cold War, when and a big flashpoint of the Cold War, a big kind of symbolic playing field of the Cold War was the space race. And so it was this kind of, well, now that we're done with all that nonsense, America and Russia and China and various others can, although China, I think, hasn't yet participated in the International Space Station, somewhat controversially, but, they can put their differences aside and they can proceed in a spirit of benign space exploration and harmony. And as a lawyer, I was quite interested in that because there were all of these like international law instruments that dealt with space exploration and the moon and stuff, which I just had no idea about. So there was a thing called the Declaration of Legal Principles governing the activities of states in the exploration and uses of outer space. There was another one which dealt specifically with the moon, and there are kind of concerns, obviously, from different nations about, don't use this as a kind of as a new frontier for colonization and warring empires and so on. So there are all these principles about, for example, in the Declaration, it says no one nation may claim ownership of any outer space or celestial body. Activities carried out in space must abide by the international law, and the nations undergoing those activities must be responsible for the governmental or non-governmental agencies involved. Objects launched into space are subject to their nation of belonging, including people, etc. So there's kind of all these weird provisions for.
You must have seen in I'm more familiar with entertainment law because I've had to glance at some of those contracts in the past, and there's a clause in a lot of entertainment law contracts. Say, for example, if you're a musician and you make a song and you sell the rights, the contract discusses the rights of the piece of work, the song in this case, and it says this document applies to like this song being played anywhere in the known universe.
Yeah, that's
because they're like building in that at some point there might be like a moon radio station or like commercials being played on Mars when people live there, which is crazy. Do you think?
It's not too far.
Do you think, John, that I'm worried about the people on that International Space Station developing space madness.
Well, I did a bit of deep diving on the effects of space flight on the human body, and because initially I was like, okay, what's going on with the bacteria? And then I read about this, and it said, they've actually been studies where they've found this bacteria on the International Space Station, and it's evolving at a slightly faster rate than it evolves on Earth because it's got to adapt to microgravity and weird conditions. And so it's quite unique in some ways. And then it was, there were questions about what that meant for the health of the astronauts. And so I was looking at, well, what does it do to you to be in space for, hundreds of days or thousands of days? And there's all this stuff I had no idea about. And I thought, it's weird that people don't really want to talk about this, or they haven't. But it's quite unclear what being in space does to you exactly and why, but it does seem to have a pretty profound effect on people in some cases. And so space, I mean, it's not called space madness, but it's called like space effect syndrome or whatever, basically is a kind of motion sickness that affects you while you're in space. But you're also you're up above the atmosphere, so you're subject to all of these fast-moving subatomic particles, all of this radiation, all this weird stuff, no gravity or very little gravity. So the primary, and they've done all this stuff, with animals on the International Space Station, mostly lower order animals like insects and mice. But there's weird things that happen to them. So flies that they've taken up to the station that come back down, they have all these like weird genetic mutations, and they kind of, when they interbreed with other flies, that carries on into the next generation. Then they sort of started to speculate, well, what does that mean for humans? So they did this twin study where they had an astronaut who was a twin, and they brought the astronaut into space for a long period, did a bunch of tests, and then saw what happened to him as opposed to what happened to his twin brother who didn't go to space. And it was like pretty weird. Like there's quite a bit of DNA damage because you're just up being pelted by all this radiation for the most part. So there's a few things that happen to you because of the weightlessness, like your muscles atrophy, you get weird kind of, bone density issues, you get balance disorders, you might get eyesight disorders because like the mechanics of your eyeball are affected by low gravity. You get this thing called moon face because the fluid redistributes around your body because normally it's controlled by gravity. You might get excess flatulence. That was probably my favorite symptom. So you become weak and farty because you're in space. But then you also start to get
the price you pay.
Exactly.
For seeing the pale blue dot.
That's right. But then you also get all this weird stuff like your brain, because of the lack of gravity, changes its position in your head, and all of this radiation and subatomic particles that get filtered out by the atmosphere are zapping it. So there's some speculation that it changes people's cognition and gives them a heightened sensitivity to Alzheimer's, etc. So yeah, it's quite possible that these people who are spending like 1,000 days plus in space will end up pretty weird people, which I love.
So it doesn't seem to improve anything. No one's coming back going, my body and brain is much better for that.
No, exactly. I mean, you might think, well, that was an amazing experience. But I think that's probably more likely to happen if you go up for a bit of space tourism. If you spend like a year up there, you probably don't come back thinking, I mean, maybe you would, but it seems like a pretty fucked up experience to me. And astronauts who've done it complain about like, well, as you can expect, like I missed smelling things. I missed like changes in the seasons. I missed like all those things that you take advantage on.
Going for a walk.
Exactly.
I want to use this opportunity, John, first of all, to let everybody know that I've paid for the professional version of Twitter /X, which means I get access to Twitter's GPT. I don't know if you could, I guess, it's a large language model. So it's basically Twitter's version of ChatGPT, which is called Grok.
Yeah.
And I've put in to Grok, has anyone had sex in space? Because this is the first thing.
Yeah.
And I've got Grok because it's an Elon project. It's a bit more fun and freewheeling than ChatGPT. So you can actually set it to this beta mode, which is called fun, and so it speaks in a voice that's quite playful and irreverent. So I've said to it, "Has anyone had sex in space?" And rather than it giving me a ChatGPT, it is important to note, which is the start of every ChatGPT
Giving
answer.
You like 5 paragraphs on consent before it answers the question. Yeah.
Exactly. It says, has anyone had sex in space? And Grok has said, the age-old question of whether the final frontier has seen some, shall we say, intimate exploration based on the collective whispers of the internet and the rather tight-lipped responses from space agency. Here's the scoop. And then it says official stance, NASA and other space agencies are not very forthcoming. The challenges, imagine trying to do anything in zero gravity where even a sip of coffee turns into a floating disaster.
Plus
the rumor mill.
Added flatulence.
Exactly. You've got weak bone density and flatulence. So you're just crumbling. You're just crumbling and farting the whole time, which is not the sexiest way to present.
It's not an aphrodisiac. Yeah.
The rumor mill, despite the official denials, space enthusiasts and conspiracy theorists have had a field day. I mean, here we go. There's talk of quiet times on the International Space Station. Astronauts.
Surely you would go. Surely you'd say, if you were up there and you're getting along with someone, you'd be like, "Come on, we got to do this." Like, how many people have done
this? It's not the Mile High Club.
Exactly.
It's the interplanetary, oh so extraordinary club.
Yeah,
extraordinary. This is I'm just doing the Carpenters, the lyrics from the Carpenters calling on from interplanetary craft. And so if I was an astronaut, John, it'd be the first thing that I would do. I'd have all these tasks that because I will have trained for years to be an astronaut. And I'm going to get up there with a sexy astronaut lady and I'll get on to the International Space Station. I would have been already using my Riz on the Starliner.
Totally.
Just be going, I'll just be doing my eye contact, saying, what's been one of the highlights of your week, darling? And she's going to go, oh, this sexy astronaut. Can't wait
how to talk.
to get on the space station with him. And then we get up, then we'd enter the International Space Station together and then I'd go, and then NASA would go, astronaut Holland, report for first duty. And I'd go, nah. And then I'd just be, you wouldn't hear from me again for weeks.
just sowing your oats. I mean, people must have at the very least jerked off. Who was the first person to jerk off in space?
Yeah. And you have to be real careful about that as well.
Exactly. You'd be just getting globs of spunk floating around the ISS. I mean, did Neil and Buzz when they went to the moon? Buzz seems like the kind of guy who would have gone, I'm going to knock one out just to say that I did on the moon.
Also, because you go, well, if you're not going to let me go first, then this is what you get.
We've got to have a story to rival yours. I mean, so I thought a few things from all of this research. One, I wish Butch and Sunita the best, but I do kind of hope that something weird happens, like maybe the bacteria evolves and makes everyone go mad. Maybe there's some kind of, aliens-esque incident where we go up there and they're all gone and we don't know where they went. But also,
that would be great.
Would be good, wouldn't it? But also, you think, I mean, I understand the ethical reasons why we're only putting like insects and mice up there, but come on, let's get like a bunch of gorillas and just
get the monkeys back.
Exactly.
Old school space exploration. Put the monkeys back.
I mean, if you were a prisoner, if you said, okay, life without parole, you're in there anyway. You're just kind of dead to society. If they said, do you want to be a test subject for space radiation, you'd be like, yeah, what else am I doing?
Yeah.
Just get up there.
Yeah.
Or large birds, because I want to know what like an albatross does when there's no gravity, just like flapping around. Just exactly flapping around in a state of total confusion. But it also makes me less concerned about trash because I think, well, the poo's getting burned up. Why don't these guys, each of them just takes 2 bags of rubbish with them when they go and, and then puts it in the atmosphere to burn up, just does their bit,
I'd be at NASA planning and I'd go, guys, let's just put 100 snakes up there. And they go, why? I go, oh, it'd be pretty rad.
Yeah.
There's like heaps of snakes and maybe a bunch of 4,000 quokkas and a bunch of just like released.
That's right.
It'd be the cutest goddamn International Space Station
that you ever did see.
Let's put like a bunch of tigers and then a bunch of anacondas just in a big old space station. Just see what happens.
Yeah.
Give it a year.
My anaconda don't want space unless you
got buns, baby.
I feel disempowered. I need to get one of my own weird voice devices.
Sha.
Oh.
Sorry about that. That's the last one. Delay. Sorry. I've got the delay stuck.
I've almost finished.
Sorry, okay, I'm done. John, that was the episode. We talked about everything everybody wanted to talk about. We talked about
space,
guilty pleasures on Spotify. Daniel Eck, keep trying to get him on the cast. Daniel Eck, I know that you're a listener, CEO of Spotify. Come on the show, explain to us how Spotify is. Man, look at that. It's fucking hot in here today, isn't it? I've got sweat marks. Daniel Eck, you big, beautiful, bald bastard. Get on the show, explain to us how the guilty pleasure things works. And Daniel, I'd love to hear what music you like. He's a Swede, I believe. So probably Avicii.
Yeah. Or
No. Or Roxette.
Or ABBA.
He
Yeah.
loves ABBA. He loves Roxette, and he loves
Avicii.
And John, do you want to
See us out.
of the show?
I want to
say also we talked about Spotify and we talked about space. Sorry, I forgot to say
talked about space. The final frontier. Do you want
you
to know?
you,
Do you want to know more? Happy for this to become a real deep dive. Do you want to know more about fecal bacteria in space? Happy to tell you a bit more about that. Do you want to know more about insects, plants, diseases, space madness?
With your outro, I want to say thank you to Marie Holland for phoning in as well. That was our first phone in after 177 episodes. It's turning into going to be a call-in show from now on, and we're going to open the lines up.
And I'm sorry that you didn't want us to play that, but we have to. Come on.
And John, also when you do the outro, might as well just mention to people who aren't Patreon members what they're going to be missing out on, what's going to be coming. I've got to go and change shirts and change the color of the light in the background so it looks like we recorded on a different day. But why don't you tell everybody what they're going to be missing out on if they're not Patreon members of the Machine?
Guys, I know that some of you have got your finger hovering above that subscribe button, and I want to encourage you to press that finger down because exciting things await you. If you want to join the Gateway tier, if you want to join the mid tier, or if you want to join the Champagne Comedy tier, as Al likes to say, pick the tier that's best for you and your family. But know that whichever one of those you pick, there's going to be benefits, there's going to be bonus episodes, there's going to be additional content, there's going to be merch, there's going to be
episodes come out a day early for every tier.
Early episodes.
Monday episodes, yeah.
There's going to be, in some cases, there's going to be private messages, content from me to you, from Al to you.
We have the equivalent of like the Corey hotline. Exactly. This is like a special call. It's the John and Al hotline where you get our private numbers.
I'll give you my private number. You can call me anytime, day or night.
Free legal advice.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great idea. Just get disbarred because I'm offering people free legal advice for Patreon money. But it really does help a lot. We've noticed already that it's just allowing us to make some bold choices with the kind of zany products that we subscribe to that help us to make a richer environment for you on this podcast. So it just opens up doors for us and we really appreciate you. So yeah, give that some thought. But in the meantime, give your thought to Butch and Sunita and wish them well across the eons of space between you and them. Send them happy vibes. Time and space. Send them happy vibes and send your congratulations to Oleg Kononenko, who's up above 1,070 days in space. What's it doing to his brain? We'll find out when he comes back. But
and
until
John, just before you, until then, John, I just wanted to say, me and John, after this, we are recording the first of a bonus episode of the podcast, which will be a Patreon members only bonus. It's going to be called Don't Praise the Machine After Dark. We finally get to talk about all the weird stuff that they won't let us put on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Yeah.
And so if that's something that interests you, also consider that because you get that on all
stuff. All the stuff that makes our sponsors a bit skittish. We'll get right into it on the bonus app.
See us out of this, John. See us out of this show.
Guys, we hope that you blast off into outer space listening to this episode, and we cannot wait until you come back crash landing through the atmosphere next week.
At the podcast.